This is amazing. Thank y'all for coming. So a little bit of the focus today is on the art itself as an artist. Are any of you artists? Yay. Okay. So I have, especially if you do want to stay for a minute, I have all of the pastels. This medium that I use is not chalk. This is pigment. It's expensive. And so it's pure pigment. So this is called dry pastels. And I have some different papers out here. And as we walk, I'll tell you a little bit about the art for art's sake. But I will tell you, people come here, you think, I always want to be a mother. I always wanted children. I always wanted to paint children. And all of that's a lie. I grew up, and this was me. I was a professional athlete. Snow skiing, water skiing. I used to drive by here when I was at the University of Georgia and at Bernal, and I taught skiing at Cataloochee. Started the first freestyle school, ballet, and in water skiing, I started out skiing at Lanier Islands with my brothers and ended up skiing in the U.S. ski team in Japan. So I was a show skier, water skier, snow skier, diver, four brothers, just sports. Also a Christian. I thought, well, God is wanting me to just be a really good athlete. That's what I'm called to do. And just to talk to people and, that's what I'm called to do. But I loved every minute of being an athlete. So when I was in my 30s, early 30s, I met a guy named Jeff who was not nearly as cool as the top athletes I dated. And I had taken a pause and built a house in Duluth. My mother designed and built a house, so I did too, on a lake. And he would come help me. But this was the day to break up with him because he was too nice. That was a curse. This was the day to break up with him. He was too nice, but he was a lot of help around building the house. So I decided to break up with him. And so we were sitting on the sofa, and I'd finished the house. And I said, "You're so nice," like it was a cuss word. Nice. And he said, "Oh, but I'm not a pushover." And I thought, "Oh, that's probably more accurate." And then he looked at me and he said this. He said, "You know, Kathy, it takes strength to give." And I went, where did I go off the tracks? Where in the world did I go? What direction am I headed? How could I not see that strength is in giving? And so I married him. With one thing, I never want children. And I got pregnant on my honeymoon. But God has a sense of humor. I just talked about Joe. God has a sense of humor. So I played in the USTA state finals, and straight from the last stroke of my tennis, I went into the hospital to deliver the first baby. I lost third set tiebreaker, but I was in labor, and I played my whole match in labor. I didn't know it. That just shows you how addicted I was to sports. And so after I had the baby, I thought that would change my life, but after a little while, that second baby came, and I was ready to get back into my sports. I said, "Jeff, you just got to get on." So I decided the thing to do. I took a Bible study on marriage. Thought, well, this will be really good for him. He'll come around. This will do it. He'll see that today's woman, when they're good at something, you're supposed to support them. The women of the world are on my side. And so in that Bible study, this is what I learned. I learned that God was telling me, Kathy, let go of who you think you are. Let me show you who I know you to be. Let go of who you think you are and trust me. And let me show you a different version of you that I know you to be. And believe it or not, I listened. And I let go. I realized going off a ski jump was easy compared to being a mother. But what happened is I gradually started falling in love with my children on a different level. I cared when their tooth came out. I cared about these things. I was the first of 4 generations of women who stayed home to be a mother. Then my mother and my art said, well, now can you come paint with us? You're home. Well, I did have a background in painting. When I was in high school, I went away to boarding school at Burnell Academy. Do y'all know where Burnell is? Did you know they used to have a boarding school academy? So in the late 60s, I went there, and I met a girl who is still my best friend today. I saw a picture of her with a horse, and I camped out right there, and that girl's mother studied at the Louvre in Paris. She was a famous art teacher. She was only one of two women in America that had studied with the curator of the Louvre, who rediscovered the mediums used by the old masters and taught that. And when she met me, no, she didn't go, you look like you have talent. She went, if I get you to come take classes from me, maybe my daughter will come. That's how I started studying with her. Then my mother met her, and my mother is a painter. And this painting over here, on the left, is a painting my mother did in 1954 that hung over my bed. And that's a copy of a very famous painting. I've had a lot of people here that had that same painting over their bed. And there's also a little boy with the bear trap pajamas. So that's my mother's painting. And then I did a modern day version of those 2 paintings. So if you were to take a modern day gown, and the painting in the middle now is going to be sold by Costco. So yes, go figure. But so my mother, who had studied painting, discovered her talent too late, she felt, designed this building. She and my best friend's mother became best friends, and I studied classical art, which is not taught today, not really, in our schools. But it is where you work from life. So this painting, this was a plaster cast of grapes, and when I had to do it from life, it had to be so accurate that it would lay over the actual cast. And I couldn't just put a grape here and a grape there. They had to perfectly line up. And it looked like a geometry problem. Everything was angles and points and directions, and you're supposed to do it, but I sort of cheated. So when she wasn't there, I would draw the grapes, and then I add the angles afterwards, And so I was blessed to have this amazing background, but I didn't appreciate it. And to me, art was a discipline, not a love, but a discipline. So I had this background. This was Marie Antoinette, and you drew for 4 years without color. So stop that, do the sports, come back to the point where I'm staying home, and my mother and my aunt, both artists, say, okay, this guy's coming to town. He does this medium called pastels, and he's an impressionist painter. Let's go see him. So we studied under him, and when I saw him paint, I just said, you mean I can just make it up? Do y'all know that old masters artists copy old masters? They never create their own art until they're like 90. And so I said, can I use whatever color I want? Is there like a rule? So for the first time when I realized I could create, and I started learning to paint landscapes and negative spacing, I fell in love with art for the first time, which wouldn't have happened had I not stayed home, been a mom, right? And so when I fell in love with the art, then three of my paintings were being framed here in Duluth, and a top publisher at Gwinnett Gallery, a top publisher saw the art. Next thing I knew, I had a contract, and my landscapes were sold across America in what used to be called frame shops. Do you remember every town had multiple frame shops? And limited editions, all these terms, So here now my landscapes are being sold in these different towns. And so I've started becoming more sophisticated in my landscapes. And then my daughter said, I want to be there. Sure. So I put her there. But when I did, I started realizing how hard it was to put a figure in a landscape without it looking cut out. And I started going, gosh. And so I started working as tiny as this is Kelly. As tiny as this is, I started realizing if you added a figure to art, that there was a whole nother learning curve that I needed to learn. So I went through a whole thing of doing Monet women, and then I did this. There's a painting over here. My mother, you'll keep hearing that, said, why aren't you painting your daughter? Now you've got these two. Why don't you paint Maggie? So my best friend Laurie, who painted this, so see, this was commissioned by my mother, by this artist. My senior year of college, I lived in Palm Beach, and I worked in, after living in the Okefenokee Swamp. See, I got out of art. Art was weird at the University of Georgia, so I changed to Parks and Rec. I majored in Parks and Rec. I was the first class of Parks and Rec graduates. From my living in Okefenokee Swamp, I went and worked in Palm Beach. This football player said, I work at a club. You just work on the beach all day. You can come be my assistant. I said, great. And then he says, you can live with my sister. She's down there. She's got a big house. I meet his sister. She had no idea we were coming. She had never met me in my life. She said, well, I will give you a 2-week probation. Then you're out of here. I went, okay. So after 2 weeks, I decided I didn't like it because she had a guy living there with her, her boyfriend, her brother who I thought was kind of crazy. And so I was going to go and live somewhere else, but at the club with all the people who worked there. And I told her I was leaving. Do you know what she did? She kicked out the boyfriend, and she kicked out the brother, and she kept me. And she was a painter. And she taught classes out of her home, and she painted with light and color and these flesh tones with aquas in them. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I fell in love with what she did. She was visiting me. She's a famous portrait artist. I said, Laura, you paint the kid. I'll paint the flowers. Let's make my mother happy. Let's put this up in my nursery. Oh, everybody will be happy. And then my publisher comes and she hands me, she says, I've got a contract here for you to sign. I'm going, for what? Oh, a children's calendar. What? Yeah, what? Yeah, I took a picture of that painting you did in the nursery and I showed it to Current. Current, largest publisher in the world. They love it. They have an artist, Donald Zolan, #1 children's painter in the world. And now you're going to take his place and start doing his calendars. You're going to paint children. I went, whoa, 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 whoa. I said, we've got a problem. I don't paint children. They said, you've got a problem. This is a great contract. You now paint children. And I said, no, I don't want to paint. It's just, no. So I said, okay, well, is there like a deadline? It's a calendar. So does that mean like how many paintings a year? 12. Okay. Oh my God. So that means the rest of my 12 paintings, that eats up my whole year. And so I said, there's no way I can make the deadline. I mean, you want me to do 12 paintings in 4 months. They came back to me. They said, we found another artist whose style will blend with yours. If you do 6, she does 6, we'll have our calendar. I said, well, who is this other artist? It was Laurie. Laurie lives in South Florida. It was Laurie. I said, let her do them all. She'd do a great job. Too good a contract. So all these paintings you see were with a deadline. This particular image that you see, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Is she looking at y'all over here? Is she looking at y'all over there? Is she looking at y'all? This painting is one of my favorite. It was the 12th painting for the calendar. I had a deadline. I had just was starting the face, and it was due that day. I called FedEx. I said, please be the last pickup today. And I'm at my mother's. I hadn't even started the hat. And I'm going, but I wanted to do a straw hat. And I'm going, oh my gosh, how do I do how do you do a hat? And all I can see is, I went, okay, what if I make it? So I put a straw hat up and I started going in circles, making it. And as I'm going, I'm throwing paint here, throwing paint here, throwing paint here, throwing paint here, and the doorbell rings. And I have to take it off the easel, put it in the box, and FedEx takes it away. And I go, oh, God, I didn't finish it. Awful. And it came back a month later, and I pulled it out of the box. And today, it is still my favorite painting because they say it takes more than one to paint, one to hit you over the head when it's done. For me, it was a FedEx, but it's just this gestural painting that I would have probably worked another 2 days on. So there you have it. So now the rest of the exhibit will go fast. It won't be talking like this, but actually, this was unusual. A girl actually sent me a photograph, and this girl was wearing a blue jean hat. She was holding the bunny down in her lap, but she had this look on her face.
I was going to say that sort of a pouty, like, it looks like she's crying. Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad you said that, because when I was given the contract to paint children, I decided to have a board meeting with myself. How am I going to paint children? What's my style going to be? If I'm going to be painting 12 images a year and I don't have time, I need to set my own brand. And so I threw every photograph I could dig up on photographs and paintings of children, and I started eliminating. And I ended up with 3 left on the desk. The first one was a painting by Bess P. Scoopman, was a very similar artist to the one that hung over my bed. And I went, I want the softness and innocence that this medium can bring, the pastel medium can bring. The second image that I had was Norman Rockwell. And I said, I want to tell a story. I want to show personality. If Norman Rockwell were to paint kids, and that's what I want. But you know what the third one was? This is really weird. Michelangelo, David. So here's this nude man, you know, he's my third. Have y'all ever read Agony and the Ecstasy? So in that book, I don't know if you know the story behind sculpting David. I had more in common with Michelangelo's approach, because when you do classical art, it's not like today where you just throw together something quick. You don't start a painting, you consider you're doing your next masterpiece. You research it, you do it, and the thought that he went through. But when he did David, it was a competition. Very similar to the competition I was having for Martin Luther King, but I didn't know it. There is a huge piece of Carrabba marble, the purest, whitest, most beautiful piece ever discovered. And all these artists competed, and they said, how would you sculpt David? So some artists put him as the athlete. Some of them showed him for his youth. Some showed him as the conqueror holding Goliath's head, and other with his foot on Goliath's head. And then David went, what would I do? But what is the key to that story between the battle of David and Goliath? So he read that David battled could kill the bear and the lion with his bare hands. If you ever see it, he's got huge hands. He said, you know, I think the most important about that story is the moment that David looked at Goliath and said, my God is bigger than you, and his mind went, now. That moment of decision, and if you look at it, his eyes have said, now, and his body is still relaxed. And I thought, what if I paint children where I leave you, the viewer, deciding, is this child going to let you hold this bunny or not? You know, the moment of decision, is this child going to grab the fish out of the bowl or not? You know, there's all kind of rules that go with art. You don't do this, you don't do that. Well, you're the viewer, you're part of it too. And I can tell you, as I photographed and painted children, I would have my great ideas. I'd get down to do a photo shoot and I'd stand up and do a totally different painting altogether. You can't out-kid a kid. I wanted that moment of decision to play into it. Okay, so this is the most recent piece. that I painted, and I'm going to show you what it looks like with a good light on it, and we will fly through. But are y'all familiar with the guardian angel painting that was also on many? Can y'all see this? The guardian angel painting was on walls. Do you know it's the #1 most popular piece of Christian art that grew up in homes, grandmothers? Well, I thought I wanted to do a modern day version of this painting, the guardian angel, where the children are frightened. They're going over the bridge, over troubled waters. The hole in the bridge is, they're just passed over it. The angel was there to help them. And I thought, well, what can I do? What would be different? So I decided, what if the angel came up from under the bridge? And what if the hole in the bridge is in front of the children and they're oblivious to the fact they need the angel? And her hand is here. And the children, it's a single lane bridge because it's life. And she's holding flowers, the daisies. What do y'all think the daisies represent? Did you know flowers have different? That's the flower of innocence. Heather, are you ready for this? The flower of protection. They said the warriors took it into battle. I don't picture them doing that. But anyway, so this painting is done in a circle. I don't know if you can see it all. I have to turn the light back on. So that gave me the area above the bridge, and I put the dove, the spirit, which is more powerful. So the light of the dove is hitting the children, then the wings go up on both sides of the bridge for protection. This is to lead you in. And the painting is a circle. Can y'all see the circle? Well, I'll give you part of it. The dove to the children. You catch this. Her arms bring you here. She's pointing up. Her hand is to the hole in the bridge. And the other side. And then back up to the dove. So it's called Wings of Protection. Anybody any questions? I promise you the rest is faster than this. So we'll go through these paintings that were done. It took me at least a month per painting. I would say painting at least 6 hours a day. At the opening of this, my daughter, they allowed her to speak as to what it was like being the daughter of an artist. And she said, yeah, I remember my sister and I wrapped around my mother's legs, begging her to feed us, you know. And my daughter, Kelly, I remember her at 3. I'd hear this dragging motion, climbing up, and I would hear this little voice. She'd be there by the switch. She'd go, I'm going to turn out the light on the count of 3. 1, 2, wait, let me just finish this one little, I'm just going to, 2, total darkness, so, because I painted in the basement. So it was pretty cute hearing them. All right, so we'll move on. If y'all want to come in this room. This is the first time pastel paintings have ever been on display unframed. It's a very vulnerable medium, but first of all, I couldn't afford to frame them. But you will learn a lot by seeing it unframed. And so these are all, can you see the rough edges? But you're able to see where I'm testing for color. Every time I do a painting, I didn't want to name it like Pear in a Bowl. You know, I wanted to tell you another perspective from the title. So as I would paint, a lot of times I would jot ideas for names as I worked. And so we'll start, this is, it's called Look Into My World. This is our daughter. This painting is the worst design in the history of art. 2 circles with a path down the middle. That's a big no-no. But the way I overcame it, which took a while, was to put hair up here to get rid of the circle. And if I made her flesh tones match the fish and the fish's tones match the child, I put just enough pink in the fish and just enough orange in the kid. And if I put a reflection here, I have a stepping stone so that you can connect the two. So that's what I did. It took a while in that case. This is called Meet Yourself, Tweet Innocence, Won't Find Us Here. Now, the difference between my painting style and a portrait artist is a portrait artist has their flesh palette. I'm so jealous. And they use their flesh palette, and they can add it dark, whatever they do. They do their painting, and then the background is usually pretty typical, very simple. I have to recreate the wheel every time I do a painting. I have to come up with an entirely different palette because the background has to be part of the child has to be part of the background. I have to set the mood, and I have to convince you the child is really there, that the background's reflecting into the face of the child is reflecting into the background. Does that make sense?
So you never used like a photograph of them to do?
I always did photographs, but I had to change. The photograph was only for the drawing.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't use you'll see a whole wall of photographs. I even have a photograph with my first painting of a face. You know, when I was asked to do the calendar and I didn't paint faces, when I did my first face, I was literally on my knees going, I don't know how to paint faces. It was like a voice said, well, it's thin lines, it's thick lines, it's darks, it's lights. And my first face is over here. And when I started painting that face and I added one little shadow, it changed the entire expression. And for the first time, I fell in love with the power of painting a face. I could not believe that one little thing. So you know how you say your pets find you? It's true with my painting children. I had to be backed against a wall with a contract and a deadline and not want to do it so I could produce the art that I was meant to produce. And that's just kind of what's happened here. So this is called Tweet Innocence. Won't Find Us Here. This is a painting of twins, and even though they look alike, how different they are. And then I got a lecture from an artist. You never paint children in a vulnerable position where they could fall off. I said, well, you're the viewer. You can catch them. You're right there, okay? And so they have matching teddy bears, but there's the one lamb. So this is called Double Vision. Save the Pandas. It's our daughter Maggie. Catch the Spirit. Simple Wonders. So you can see the difference in colors of the flesh between here and that upper one. So I did figurines. I did dim decor. Are y'all familiar with Willow Tree? So I did every painting I did became a figurine, and I designed them. And I worked around the clock where I would work during the day and they would sculpt at night. And I have about 150 figurines. Almost every painting in here became a figurine. Some of them that are left in the series are out in the atrium when you walk in, and nativities. And so I was going to do a photo shoot of this little girl. When I walked in, that's what I saw. The thing that makes this unique is that the focal point is the girl and she's in shadow. So this is called A Little Help from My Friends, Fresh from Heaven. This was fun. I went through a spell of painting the background fuchsia and making my own papers. This is our daughters. So this background is pink. This is called Simple Wonders. Wings. In every painting I'm having to figure out, how do you paint a bird? How do you paint a cardinal? How do you do this? That's part of the challenge that I loved. And when I would paint, I could have as many as 100 photographs around me and stuck to walls, and I'm walking over here and picking up the one to do the wing, the beak of the bird, or whatever. I mean, it was a filing nightmare. And I'm an artist. And I would walk at least 10 miles per painting because I work standing. And I'd walk up and I'd work and I'd walk back. This is called Drawing Closer. This really happened. I looked outside and this dog was in a stroller and the dog did not move. And they were pushing this dog all around the neighborhood, and the dog did not move. So I literally took this picture and did this painting. What would you name it? Think about it. What would you name it? Oh man, I chewed on this. I'm like, what do I name this piece? And then it finally hit me. You want to know what it was?
Sure.
Things we do for love. So this is the girl, and this is called Spoiled by Grandma. And she has an attitude. And I try when I do paintings with children, if they're stuffed animals, I like to paint the stuffed animals with the attitude of what they're being subjected to. You know, so you can see that this poor thing has had to deal with her. She's got the letter to Grandma. And you know, if you look at the detail, by the way, it about killed me doing this shirt. Oh my God. Then I did it 3 times. She's the only kid I painted 3 times. And I painted this. It's the same shirt as up there. Oh, yeah. Notice the difference in colors because now it's indoors. Yeah. Now it's outdoors. Notice you'll see, even, you know, when you have your flip-flop and you turn your foot, your toe falls off the shoe. Yeah. So you'll see that. I do write in every painting, glory to God. I usually don't tell people at this point because we're not going to stop and find them all because I don't know where a lot of them are. But here, on a lot of these, it's real obvious. You can see it. My cousins, this is called Mama Be Proud. I fish. I'm an angler. So if you look at this stringer of fish, they get deader as it goes down because that's the first fish you caught. So if you fish, anybody of you fish? You know. The neighbors were great. I would get neighborhood kids. My neighbor next door had 8 children. And I would knock next door and I'd go, I need a 5-year-old hand, boy. I need a this, I need a that. I used their kids. So to do this painting, I had it all worked out. I got all the neighborhood kids together. They put on their, I said, we're going to make this real. They put on their galoshes. They put on their raincoats. They're all around. This is what I was going to paint. Isaac was holding the umbrella, and my daughter Kelly was supposed to be like one of those cute things where boys are trying to be gentlemen, but she's standing there with her arms crossed, and the water's dripping on her head because the umbrella's not covering her. I'm getting great photos of that. I mean, she's here, and it's dripping on her head, and he's holding it. And in the middle of all of that, Gabby marches up to her older brother, and she grabs that umbrella, and she pulls it down, and his head's popping through it, and she goes, share! And I went, click. So that's what I ended up painting, is share. These are not originals, but I wanted them to be in the exhibit. The top painting is, do you see the footprints coming to join the older sister? That's called Take Care of Your Sister. This painting was done for Focus on the Family. Now, Focus on the Family had my publisher, Harvest House Publishing, Focus on the Family had never done a book with some other publisher. And they said, we want our artists to do a book jointly. And they said, we don't do that. Focus on the Family voted unanimously because of the art that they would allow another publisher to use their name, and they distributed my book through Focus on the Family and Harvest House. The first time Focus on the Family had ever agreed to that. And the book is here. It's called Heaven Sent. And if any of you want it, I will sell it to you today for $5 because I bought a lot of them. So anyway, so that was called Together We Build. And it's the message of children come. You know how children will build? You come together and they're building the kingdom. And I have to admit, this is my daughter Kelly, who was my model. Went to the neighborhood pool again, grabbed them, Isaac and Gabby again, and this is called Miss Manners. The mayor was here for a minute. She just left, but this was taken at Nancy Harris's house where I rode, and this was my first horse. So this is called Howdy Partner. More neighbors down the street. This is called Grandma's Treasures. And of course, we know the true treasures are the children. This is called Mama's Coming. And the background is done. I laid down lace and I spray painted it and I got a pattern, and that's how I created this background, which is great. I didn't want to paint. You imagine having to paint all of that? So Grandma's Coming. It's a photograph of my great aunt. It's Meredith Parsons. This was taken in the 40s. My mother painted it from a black and white photograph. And so I also wanted to paint it. I had to make up a lot of it because it was so dark. So this is all heirlooms in here. This is her father was one of the first photographers in Duluth. And so this was a painting of her. My mother-in-law made the Raggedy Ann, and this was a Coca-Cola family heirloom that my cousin married into. He grew up with that in his home. So Claire's here. So anyway, yeah, that was this was the Montgomery's heirloom quilt. This was hanging in our state capitol for 24 years. Brooks Coleman, our congressman, and the county asked me to do a painting for them. And so I made a deal with the county. I said, if I do a painting for Brooks, who opened up the softball park, you know, Shorty Howell, and this was the ribbon cutting. What can you do? I said, well, I didn't want to charge the county. I said, will you allow my daughters to go to your tennis lessons and your summer camps and all? So we made a trade. So it didn't cost them really anything. So our girls got to attend different things in the summer that they had. But his name's Brooks Coleman, so it's Brooks Coleman, who brings joy. And purple and white, of course. But I was unable to go to the ribbon cutting, so I wrote him a letter. If you want to read it, it tells, I read it and remembered things. Each thing in there, there's an icon. There's a reason for it. So anyway, do y'all remember when the economy just sort of crashed? I know we lost our lumber business. Banks weren't loaning money. It was so horrible. These paintings are a penny saved is a penny earned. These paintings are done with piggy banks, just talking about the importance of saving. This painting won an international award. I was very excited, and if we had more time, I'd tell you, I got to use it talking to an art group. Do y'all know Norman Rockwell was never considered a fine arts painter? He was considered an illustrator, yet he was truly a fine arts painter. And so I was considered an illustrator, but I got my copy of the magazine right before I spoke to the group. I went, did y'all get your magazine yet? You know, so anyway, so that's what this is. This wall's special. This is all my children. This is a family wall. I did, before, you know, this nursery really got me in trouble. So in my nursery, the first lecture I got from my mother is, you're about to have children. Paint something for your nursery. You're about to have them. I just started pastels, so I did a cutesy, cartoonish picture of two little girls sitting on a bench, a blonde and a redhead, and the picture is here. When you walk by it, you'll see it. And I did it for the nursery. 3 years later, Laurie Hines said, I love that portrait of your children. I had no idea what she was talking about. So I went upstairs, and she said, this portrait, do you know that I painted two girls sitting on the bench, a blonde and a redhead? The blonde has her arm around the redhead, and this is a painting of our daughters. I put them in the exact position when they got older and brought to life the cartoon painting I did. But that was after saying, thank you, God, I didn't paint 5 little boys on a bench. No. Thank you. Thank you. So this is called When You Get Big Like Me. The most amazing story that you'll hear, and I cannot believe you are here because I have been talking about you. This is an amazing story. So we have these two girls. My daughter Maggie, 6 years old, our church had a band that came to play. Now, as a Methodist, they don't have an altar call, but this band did. This teenage band playing had an altar call. And I looked, and my little 6-year-old girl walked down the aisle and walked up to the front of the church. And she turned around and she professed her faith to the whole church. And I'm still in the pew. I'm going. And so I asked her, I go, do you know what you just did? So I called in the pro. I called in you. You. And I said, will you listen to this child? And you said, yes. And you came back to me, and you remember what you said?
She knows what she's talking about.
You said, I've never heard an adult that could explain it as with the way your child is. Here's my child. And then, weeks later, she says, I'm going to be a missionary. Well, I was going to be too. Oh, no. My child went through her life. She never looked left. She never looked right. Matter of fact, her younger sister and I, the redhead, we'd say, let's don't tell Maggie what we're doing, because she was so focused through her entire youth. She ended up going to Moody Bible and other missionaries, and if she dated a preacher who didn't want to be a missionary, she'd dump them so fast. So she finally meets this guy who was raised on the mission field, and they're going to be missionaries. And now the day has come, she and her husband are going out to meet the host family of where they are going to first start serving, they believe. And so it's a third world city. So they go, and when they leave, it hits. Could you imagine being the mother? Then it's all coming back to life that they're going. And I said, God, the day's come. She's yours now. And I want a sign. Sorry, but I want lightning. I want bolts of lightning. A rainbow might work. But I want some humongous sign, because that's how weak I am. That's how small I am. I need it. So she comes back, she and her husband, and they start talking about the ministry and that they are going to accept it and what they're going to do. And as she's doing it, there's not even one hair on my arm raised. Nothing. And then this is what she did. She walked out of the room, and then she backed back in the door. And she goes, oh, Mom, by the way, this was really weird. But when we walked in their house, the first thing we saw on the wall was one of your paintings. And she said, and I looked, and she said, and I told them, she said, this is my sister, and these are my cousins. And the missionary said, I know, it looks like our kids too. And she said, oh, no, that really is my sister, and those really are my cousins. My mother painted that. Now tell me that is not a personalized, humongous thing. So a lot of these paintings have stories about how they were created, but it's the paths that they take that have been the greater story. We'll just keep going since we did this, but on this back wall, when you get a chance, a lot of people have said it's their favorite wall. I want you to come back to it because it is creating a painting. But while you're still here, I'm going to flash through these. The owner of this painting, I was not allowed to get for the exhibit because they had bolted it to the wall. She said, I never want it to leave, so I'm bolting it to the wall. But this is the heart of Christmas, and this painting goes with this nativity. So I designed a nativity based on the costumes from our church. And there's people from our church who are familiar with this. And I've had my next door neighbor with 9 sons to be my models. And they had one girl. She was my angel with an attitude. She showed up. She had to have her own private photo shoot the next day. She shows up to be the angel Gabriel with a black turtleneck on under her robe and black and hot pink cowboy boots. And so I painted it. But this nativity is unique because as a Christian painter, each figurine, when you pick it up, tells who Mary is, her role, every scripture in the Bible where you can refer to it, and then a mama's prayer. May my child, like Mary, have a servant's heart. May my child, like the wise man, give the best that he has. So this was an opportunity for me. And then here was the chorus of angels with a conductor. Because every year I had to do a December image, I created Christmas babies. This is our daughter's, our cat. It's called Night Watch. But Christmas is about giving with the milk and the carrots. You know, when you give a kid a present, they toss it aside to play with the box. So that's called Great Box Santa, you know. This was my first face, the one that I didn't want to do. And that's the one when I started seeing the shadows and I fell in love with it. And you'll see here somebody had asked, I actually found and I brought the photograph that I used. For my first face, I tried to hide as much of it as I could. I put a hat on, I put this, I put the kid behind glass, I did everything I could to show as little of the face as I could. And yet in that, I discovered my love for painting faces. So you'll see the child, the mother of this child came to the exhibit this week. That was really cool. Best gift under the tree. Now I love horses. I grew up on horses. Nancy was here earlier, the mayor. She and I lived on horses. I mean, I rode all the time. Had 4 brothers, and the best way to get away was on horses. I could ride all over as long as I showed up for meals. But I never, and every textbook I had growing up, I drew horses on the bottom of the page. And so, but I never got to paint them. So when I was at market with Dim Daco, who did the figurines, they were meeting with some people, and when I got up to walk away, I overheard them talking. They said, man, we wish this lady painted horses. And I went, wait a minute, did you say horses? Yeah, they said, you know, to be honest, the Western market has never had a relationship painting of a child's face with a horse. There's a lot of great famous paintings. You see the back of the cowboy hat. Either people can paint children or they can paint horses, but they've never been doing it together. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So now you're seeing the product from that conversation. This is called Unbridled Wonder. And I did a whole line of bronzes based on the paintings. This painting is called Love at First Sight. Whoa. And that stick horse will track you. I didn't know that until I went to the rodeo out in Las Vegas with my art. And they're going, ooh, that stick horse is looking at me. New boots and new shoes. When I did this piece, it's called Best of Show. You know, I had to figure out how can I word this because you're not going to win every horse show. So it's Best of Show to me. And so here's the horse with everything. And when I did the artwork, I thought the saddle ruined it. And so this is called the retirement gift. So the horse is being retired. I do have a quick story that I do think you need to hear about this one. These are rescue horses. But when I was in Las Vegas at the show, I was with all the cowboys. My dream come true. I could be all these cowboys. This woman walks by and she goes, oh, my husband will be along. And when he sees this painting, you're going to know who he is. He's going to stop. And then she walked on. And then this cowboy comes. He looked like he was maybe 80s, 90, and he had a walker. And he walked up to this painting and he looked over with his cane and he just stood there. And then I looked and he had a tear coming down his cheek. And I had to know. And I went up to him and I said, you know, your wife said you would stop at this painting. He said, yep, she would know. I said, well, will you tell me about it? He said, yeah. He said, that's my mayor. He said, I did the eulogy for Roy Rogers' funeral. And he said, and I told the story about my mayor. And I said, well, do you remember what you said? And then his wife comes in. Yeah, I'll help you. We'll get through it. Come on, let's sit down. You can tell it. So he sat down on a bale of hay under this painting. and he spun a yarn. And it was in prose, so it wasn't rhyme. And he would start it, she would pitch in, he would continue, she'd remember the next line. And I mean, you can imagine. So he was the songwriter for what were they called? What was the group? Sons of the Pioneers. He was a songwriter for the Sons of the Pioneers. And so he tells this story. He says there's this cowboy and his horse, and they went through life together, and there were times when the horse was down and the cowboy would pick up the horse, but there were times when the cowboy was down and the horse would pick up the cowboy. He said they leaned on each other. They went through the long days. They went through the sun and the heat and the toil, and together they would make it through the hard times. And he said, but it was always the cowboy and his horse. He says, but then the man got old, and he went to a nursing home. And the horse went to a summer camp. He says, but one day, the cowboy got away, and he sat up on the hill, and he looked down, and he watched his horse. And then it was something like this. He said, I sat there remembering all the times that I had with my horse, the good times, helping each other. He says, there were some good times for this cowboy, but there was no more nobler times than this time for the horse. Do y'all get it? That those few days with the kids, to him, he saw more reward in that than all his time with that horse. Oh, we were all crying. And do you know what? My friend filming it did not turn on the camera. So I don't have it to show. But anyway, this painting here, who knows what they're doing? I was really excited about doing this painting. And so this is my cousin Graham. And so Graham modeled for me, and this was Graham's girlfriend for the day. And I went out, and it was fun doing the photo shoot and putting the different pictures together to see which would do which. So I did this painting. And I met a new publisher. And they were like top of the top of the top. All of the top artists around the country were with them. I was so excited. We had my introduction into the print world with this top knob publisher. And it was at the World Congress Center, and 9/11 happened, and all convention halls were closed. So it never had its opening. I never got to meet all these, but it sold out in 6 months. And I thought, what is it about this painting that would make it sell out in 6 months? And I thought, I believe people are hungry and want to remember, because praise music was coming in. They want to remember those songs that we shared from generation to generation, and that I can use our stained glass windows in our church to represent Jesus rather than something surreal. And of course, it offers me light in it. So this was the first, and this was the second. So I went to, my husband's from Texas, so I loved to go into galleries to see if they had my publisher was in there, if my stuff was in there. So I went into this, I was standing outside looking in the window of this big art gallery, and this bus stopped, and all these people got off the bus. These women started rushing in. We came to see that painting, the one for the deaf people. And I'm going, a painting for deaf people? He said, yeah, we've got to see the painting. I said, there's a painting for deaf people? Yeah, I've got to see this. So I got in with them. We all went in. They said, I just had it framed. Let me go get it. And they're going, painting for deaf people? Finally, somebody did a piece of art for deaf people. And I'm going, finally, somebody did a piece of art for deaf people? They came out with this painting. This is called Jesus Loves Me, and they're doing the sign. Jesus loves me. I never dreamed that I would do a painting of doing sign that this group of people had never had. And so this is Jesus Loves Me. Obviously, it did well. Using the stained glass window, this is in his hands with the music sheet. Of course, his music sheet is upside down. This is on loan from the DeVries. This is called Feed My Sheep. This little model, it's really cute. I was in church and I thought I wanted to do this painting, and I had it in my mind and I didn't know who to model. This little girl came, this is Nancy DeVries' child, came and jumped in my lap, and everywhere I'd go she'd attack me. And she jumped in my lap, and I'm going, who can I paint? Who can I paint? And I went, whoa! So there she is. Carrie, are you still here? Yes. I want you to come up here. You and your husband, where's your cute husband? Okay, you can stay there. I'll just use her. So this painting is called Be a Cheerful Giver. Can you tell them just about can you both tell them just about our church going into a building project and how unusual it is that the money's raised? Can y'all just say a word? Because they don't know about my new church up in the mountains that we love.
Well, I've been on the session also for 4 years. And anyway, we started talking about building the church before COVID. And after COVID happened, of course, all the prices went up and a lot. And so we had to raise more money. And we've just had challenge gift after challenge gift that people have said, well, if you'll raise this much, we'll match it. And it's just been incredible the way that we've met. It
sounds pretty much paid for.
Yes, right.
So this is a gift to the church.
Yes, that's awesome.
So this is what I look forward to giving the church. It's called Be a Cheerful Giver. And it's the attitude of the three givers.
And they're all anonymous, pretty much.
Right, all the gifts. That's. I know Don's very excited about that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and we want to give them the whole collection, like copies of everything, but with this. Yeah, so you already know about this then? Did Don tell you?
No. He's talking about.
Well, to keep it quiet.
Gifts, yes.
Okay, keep it quiet. It's a hush right now.
That's beautiful.
Because he's got to go through the appropriate channels to see if it's accepted, you know. But anyway. So is this kid going to give? Do y'all know who these? Do you know who this is? Julia, Julia's son. Y'all know, singer Julia.
Is it Charlie or is it Evan?
It's Evan. Mm-hmm. Evan was the model. So if you think he's going to give, if you're going to give him credit, he's holding the coin. There is a coin right here. His shoelace is undone. But anyway, do you remember when the Ten Commandments was taken out of the courthouse in Birmingham? I did a painting called Etched in Our Hearts. You may be able to take the law out of our buildings, the Ten Commandments, but you cannot take it out of us. And so that's what this painting is about. And what's so funny is now, look at this. Doesn't he look like Harry Potter? This painting's gotten more. People have responded to this piece of art than any piece of art in this exhibit, which surprises me. Yours? People who are walking this without me, they're going, I want you to tell me about this painting, and they're dragging me in here, and I realize it's this one. This painting was one that my publisher said that the Fortune 500 companies came together, and they said, we will each mentor one youth boy, and once a week we'll call them, and we'll all commit to this for a year. So the Fortune 500 companies said, let's start a mentoring organization where all the smaller mentoring organizations can come under our umbrella, and rather than being all separate, we can help fund them. We can do this. So they did. So they came together, and I do have a poster of it out there, and they formed the National Mentoring Partnership. And then they said, well, we want a piece of art. So they came to me, and they gave me their idea. And they decided that they wanted to paint a young boy with adult clothes on holding up a set of keys. And that frightened me because my daughter's learning to drive. And I'm going, I don't like that idea. And they said, well, Kathy, you do what they say. I said, well, can I just like come up with an idea over the weekend or something? And they said, yeah, okay. So I thought, what if it's just the look of the face? So I quickly went and grabbed my neighborhood boy and I said, pose for me. And I did a quick thing and he was so cute. He looked at me and goes, Miss Fincher, I'm not very needy looking. And he was big old boy, I'm not needy looking. I said, it's okay, you'll do. So then I said, do you like this idea? They said, go on and finish it. So I started again. And I found this model, this kid, and I thought, for mentoring. So put yourself in the mind of what you would paint for mentoring. So I thought, this child has come to this gate, but he cannot get through there. That is his gate of opportunity. What is beyond the gate? What do you see? You see light. What kind of light? Who's Roy G. Biv? The rainbow. These are the colors of the rainbow. So you have the rainbow through the gate, which represents hope, promise, but he can't get there. So he's a young boy and he's turned and he's looking, but he is not begging for help, because begging is this. It is just a fleeting gesture. It is just a moment of vulnerability, a small window when you can help someone that young, and then it hardens and it's gone. It's just a fleeting moment. So this is just a fleeting moment where he's turned, his eyes are fixed on you no matter where you're standing, and his hand is a fleeting moment where he's vulnerable, and the painting is called Waiting for You. So we went to New York City to a big gala, and the painting was introduced there, and I did not realize that his eyes track you until the gala, where people went, I saw, he was looking at me, it was a huge room. I saw him looking at me, I saw him, and that's when I realized it. So this painting was done for that organization. COVID killed a lot of things, and so I don't know if this organization is still going or not, but if anybody wants a copy of this, I just went through my stash, and they had given me like 100 copies of it that are just paper copies, and I need to not have them at home. So I'm not sure how to get them to you, but this Waiting for You is for all of us, is it not?
His face is just so interesting.
He kind of looks like you don't know what his background is, don't you think, a little bit? Are y'all familiar with the 4 freedoms? This is our lesson that we should all know. Y'all remember we didn't want to go into World War II? Do you remember we resisted? Do you remember how the decision when it was made that we would? It was Roosevelt. He was talking to Congress, and in his speech he said there's 4 things that all humanity needs: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, freedom from want. Norman Rockwell painted 4 different paintings. His freedom from want was his famous Thanksgiving piece. Do you know where he's there with the turkey? It was to remind people. So he did 4 paintings, and he sold those paintings, copies of them, and raised money for war bonds and helped fund the war from his art. And then after the war, as you heard there, he came back and he did paintings to remind people of who they were. So I thought, what if I were to take on the challenge of painting the 4 freedoms from today's perspective? What could I say? What could I teach? So the first I did is freedom of worship. Do you know that this is the original Constitution, and all of this stuff is mold? So this is the original Constitution. This is 7 children worshiping in their own way. I said, I think that the message today is not come to America, worship as you please. We know that. I believe that the message today is come to America, worship as you please, but understand that our laws are based on our Judeo-Christian heritage, and I can prove it. So these are all buildings in Washington, D.C. that show the Ten Commandments. Like, did you know if you walk in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, that there are 4 paintings there? Do you know what the 4 paintings are? The baptism of Pocahontas, the prayer service of Christopher Columbus, the Bible study of the Pilgrims, the prayer of the Pilgrims. Did you know that a Bible was put in the cornerstone of the Washington Monument when it was built? Did you know that if you walk into the Supreme Court, when the justices walk in, they walk under the Ten Commandments? When they open the door, it's etched in the door. When they go to sit down, each seat is carved specifically for them with the Ten Commandments on it. And then after they're seated, that in more than 24 locations around the room, in the frieze is the Ten Commandments. Did you know that? That sounds like my granddaughter. Did you know that? But anyway, so here shows you all of the things hidden in here where you can see and learn about what's in the whole city of Washington is laid out in the shape of a cross. So this, see if any of you can figure out where this quote is in Washington, D.C. It says, "God who gave us life gave us liberty. Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are a gift of God? Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever." This is etched into marble. Do you know where? The Jefferson Memorial. So you cannot go to Washington, D.C. and not know that. So the next painting will be freedom of speech, freedom from fear, freedom from want. I know what I'm going to paint in all of them. I'm so excited. It's only took me 5 years to think it through. And so the freedom of speech will be very similar. Do you see this? Can you see Moses? This is a photograph that I took of Moses in the Library of Congress, right by the sign that said, "Do not photograph." So this is a piece of art I believe needs to be in schools, needs to be wherever. And so the last thing is, no, I didn't make my career having art in galleries. I didn't make my career from selling originals. I did not want to print my art because I was told that if I had prints made of my art, I would be watering down my art. I would be prostituting my art. That the purest art, because I'm doing old masters type art, and I'm being told not to make copies of my art because the art world said that that is not what real artists do. So the publisher who wanted me to publish said, "I want you to just talk to this one woman. Her name is Dee Morgan." I don't know if any of y'all know Dee Morgan. She said, "Before you say no to us, will you just talk to Dee Morgan?" I said, "Sure." So Dee Morgan said, "Kathy," she said, "if you're a purist, you only need one buyer for one piece of art. If you're going to be successful in the print world and in the licensing world, thousands of people have to like your art. And you paint children." She said, "This is what I don't understand. Why do you do a painting for one family? What if writers thought that way? What if Gone with the Wind were written for one family?" And I'm so glad I listened to her, because what you're seeing today was my career. It's called licensing. I do a painting and it becomes products. This shows you just 2 paintings and how you have all these different companies that create their products. The Catholic Church has no idea I am a Methodist, Baptist, now Presbyterian, doing all their Catholic art for them. This piece here, which is the christening, this is probably my most sold more of than anything in this room. And that's because it was sold for products for christening. But if you had a little boy, you saw the simple dress, And if you had a little girl, you saw the frilly pillow. So it was put on all these different products. And then this plate was named the Plate of the Century by the 100th anniversary of the plate industry. Seraphin we did a collaborative event, which I didn't organize this. Don't think I was, the people my publishers are doing all this stuff. So this was the piece that was the Plate of the Century, this together. So I'm so glad that I did and painted children where they were affordable, where they were in books and cards and puzzles. I didn't become famous with my children until I did a puzzle. That was the big, you did a puzzle, you know. But anyway, if y'all have any questions, I just want to thank you for coming today. It makes the world to me to know that you're here. This exhibit will be up until the 25th. I will be here Wednesday and Saturday upcoming. So if you want to send anybody my way. For the first time, my originals are on sale. But, you know, that's not what it's about. It's about whatever you take from here today. Thank you so much.